Hello there. It's not all sweetness and light over there in the European Union, you know, despite what the anti-Brexit types would have you believe. So the German economy is still ailing. And that comes not from me, but from Germany's central bank, the Bundesbank. And there's also the issue of the freedom of movement of workers there as well. According to the Bundesbank, the German economy will continue to flatline, and it also predicts that the stagnation will continue through the third quarter of this year. And Germany, remember, went into recession at the beginning of the year, the only G7 country to do so. While shock and horror, the UK Brexit economy is not dying in a breach as foretold by the anti-Brexit mob. In fact, we learn that government borrowing is 11.3 billion quid less so far this year than predicted by the Office for Budget Responsibility. And this had the effect of reducing the nation's debt-to-GDP ratio to below 100%. In fact, after getting more updated figures, the ONS now says the country never exceeded that 100% ratio, after previously saying we had. The FTSE has also rallied, and the pound has gained against the dollar. In fact, the figures are now looking promising enough that some Tory politicians are cautiously talking about tax cuts, and inflation is slowly falling too. But both the IMF and the OECD expect Germany to be the worst performing of the leading economies this year, with the FT attributing this predicted performance to long-standing structural problems, an ageing population, crumbling infrastructure, the war in Ukraine, rising interest rates, and faltering global trade. And it's that global trade bit that really bites hard, as manufacturing makes up 20% of the German economy, but only about 10% of ours. And worse, Germany is the powerhouse of the Eurozone, and therefore of the whole EU. But Germany has also been boosting the size of its population. According to SchengenVisaInfo.com, Germany issued nearly 400,000 national visas in 2022. That's 30% higher than 2021. And they also processed more visas in 2022 than they did in the pre-pandemic years. And the data shows that most of these, just over 150,000, were for work, and just over 70,000 were for spouse reunification. So the UK is not alone in all of this. And according to Schengen Visa Info, the main country of origin of those offered visas into Germany were India, Turkey, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, the Russian Federation, and Albania. Now, I thought the whole point of being in the EU was the ability to attract workers from elsewhere within the bloc. But did you know that Belgium has operated a hard border between itself and Germany since 2016, despite both being in the Schengen zone? And these internal borders are meant to be very time limited to deal with an identified problem. And it's only now that the EU Commission is making some real noise about it and has launched an official investigation into it. In fact, internal border controls have been springing up temporarily in other places within the EU, mostly to control irregular migration. The EU Commission is also investigating those. It's like having a big one-size-fits-all outer border is of no use at all, isn't it? And I suspect that Brussels is not too unhappy about this, as it does seem to have slowed some of the irregular migrations across the EU. And it appears to have benefited the UK too. According to infomigrants.com, the number of irregular migrants passing through Belgium to get to the UK has dropped by more than 90% over the last 4 years. If only France would do the same thing. But as ever, the pro-EU types in the UK and the likes of Guy Verhofstadt, remember him, still try to make out that the massive economic fallout of the pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine are all down to Brexit. They talk about the doom and gloom in the UK, but never refer to the pandemic or Ukraine. They just lump the whole lot into the Brexit basket. While Germany goes through the ringer, while it's still in the European Union. In fact, many of the screeches from the Remoaners, or more accurately, the rejoiners, get more and more deranged. And they never ever mention the requirements that would be placed on us were we to stupidly agree to rejoin the bloc. Those requirements of ditching sterling for the euro, joining the Schengen zone, and critically not having the Thatcher rebate that saved the UK untold billions over the term of our membership. Our bills on rejoining would probably be almost double what they were in real terms, because there's no option to rejoin, only an option as a fresh new member state. And the EU has marched on to ever closer union since we left, including their military. And to survive, the EU will one day have to embark on merging its financial system, so allowing other member states to leech off of Germany and the other richer states. Not sure how long that would last. And the excess deaths continue. According to official figures from the Office for National Statistics out today, in the week ending the 11th of August, that's week 32 of 2023, there were 417 excess deaths. That's 417 more people passed away than expected. And as you can see from this graph, the number of people dying has exceeded the rolling 5-year average for most of the year. And absolute silence from the establishment and from the press. These are real people passing away, not just numbers on a spreadsheet or bars on a graph. And all but a very few of our politicians will do the obvious and ask the PM and Health Secretary why so many more people than expected are dying. And no, the health emergency lurgy was not the main driver. In fact, as far as I can see, no one knows or cares what the cause is. Although many of us suspect what the cause is and why the establishment keeps its lips tightly shut. But we can't say anything for fear of censorship. Now in England, there was an excess of 4.2%. But in Wales, it was thankfully 5.1% below the 5-year average. In England and Wales combined, the excess in private homes was 16.2% above normal, at 418 excess deaths. So why isn't the opposition asking deep and hard questions about this? And the fact Keir Starmer et al. Don't ask questions goes a long way to reinforcing the view of many that they feel as culpable for the deaths as any of the government, due to their constant backing of health emergency policies and even squealing for more of it. Otherwise, they'd be all over these figures blaming austerity or government cuts or lack of funding for the NHS, etc., etc., etc. But they don't, so even His Majesty's loyal opposition is running scared of these excess death numbers. And the press must also feel the same way, because they are staying at least one barge pole's length away from the subject. And I wonder if the inquiry looking into the health emergency will be looking into this, or even mentioning it in their report. Or will they be more concerned with Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages?